Drilling fluids touch just about everything in the drilling process. We're here to deconstruct the drilling process and drilling fluid concepts to provide a deeper understanding of our industry. In each episode, we'll share information, talk to interesting people, and maybe share a few stories along the way. Welcome to the Flowline, a production of AES Drilling Fluids, brought to you by Matt Offenbacher and Justin Gauthier.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another captivating episode of the Flowline. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Mr. Matt Offenbacher. Matt, it's good to see you, not in person but on Zoom. Share with the audience what you're doing and where are you, because you're definitely not here in Houston.
I'm in Midland. It's one of those, obviously a very important area for the oil field, and I was long overdue for a visit. So I've just been out here catching up with everybody, making sure that, with whatever I'm responsible for, we're giving everybody the resources they need to continue doing a great job for our customers. So, and I'm staying at our lovely rent house here, which actually works out as a great office too. So fun story. I normally try and steal people's offices while they're out, and they keep taking the fob that controls the mouse and keyboard. And so
What?
I think they're like onto me. So they're like, oh, this is a perfect place to set up. But then it's like, I'll just go back to the house.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So they're when you went to their office, there was no mouse or keyboard in some of them?
Well, so I had the mouse and the keyboard, but not the little fob, the transmitter.
Oh.
Like they keep that on the laptop that they take with them. So there's never a way to connect to it. And it's like, well, shucks.
Yeah, well, that'd be tough. Well, at least you can go back to the old rent house there and kind of isolate yourself, get some work done. But no, I was actually in Midland not too long ago. It's always a pleasure going back there. And the most challenging thing about Midland is figuring out where to eat, because chances are you've eaten at the same place at least 18 times.
Yes.
But every once in a while they'll pop up with a new restaurant. So for any of the listeners out there, if you've got any good recommendations for Midland besides the top ones, let me ask you that, Matt. What's your favorite restaurant in Midland?
Oh man, I feel like they come and go. Like that's the problem. Like Cork and Pig is a favorite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The bar, if you just, the food's good, right?
Do they still smoke in the bar?
I can't, I haven't been there in a while, so I'm not sure, but it seems to be. I can't imagine what has changed since when you thought it was illegal a while ago. That,
Right.
anyways, but yeah, I went to a new Irish pub last night and had bangers and mash.
Ah,
It was, yeah,
okay. I haven't been there. Haven't been to that one. I tend to, when I go there, I really enjoy Cowboy Prime.
oh yeah,
Starting to get, now that I think I've been there like 4 or 5 times, and I'll switch between that one and Venetia's is a nice dinner too. The ambiance there is fun, but yeah, it's slim pickings. But at the end of the day, it's always a good time. And but the one thing I can say is the service is typically pretty top notch. Coming back to the people of Midland, that's what makes this town what it is. It's the people.
Really, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's good. But anyway, this is definitely not a like a restaurant blog video series. We are going to talk about drilling fluids, but being that you're in Midland, I felt it was fitting to just kind of chat about Midland. And if anyone is in Midland, I commend you for living and sticking it out there. And with that being said, Matt, in drilling fluids, or really in drilling operations, we oftentimes come across some really funny names for things. And if you're not familiar with drilling operations or drilling fluids, and you heard the term kill mud, you might get a bit weary or feel a little bit uncomfortable. But have no fear. It's not as serious as it sounds, but it can certainly help you and get out of a bind, or help protect you in the case of say an underground or like a kick, or flow. And so I think today would be good, Matt, to just kind of run through what is kill mud, for those that may have heard it who are wondering what that is, and then just kind of describe what it is, what it's used for, how they're built, and I think just kind of cover that topic. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good. And I think you're right. It's something could use a little unpacking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then, I mean, again, easiest way to get started is what is kill mud?
well, it's designed to kill a flow coming from a well. So, flows can be a lot of things, and I'm in Midland, so let's speak Midlantian. That
Mm.
sounds like a word you would make up, but
Yeah, I would.
um,
I'm going to use it now.
yeah. So, but in kind of the speak in the Permian Basin, a lot of it's around water flows, right? But killing a well can be a serious thing. If you have flowing hydrocarbons, obviously that's a well control concern. It's a big deal. Um, a lot of what we do with kill mud out here is actually these water flows from uh, pressured up zones and saltwater disposal wells.
Hmm.
But we were trying to kill a flow of produced water, basically, or um, subsurface water. Um, so the thing is, we're talking about pressure, right? So it's a high density fluid. Um, Basically, you're trying to raise the pressure in the wellbore above the pressure that's coming from the wellbore. Um, and sometimes you need a lot of pressure, and sometimes you need not so much. But a lot of what we do is we'll use it and we'll pump it above these flows to basically increase our hydrostatic column from what our continuous mud weight is to a higher equivalent pressure that is higher than the water is flowing. And that way, normally, a lot of it's when we're tripping or trying to get out of the hole, we'll start to see these things. We need to get them under control. Uh,
Mm.
but you can use, kill mud is a very broad thing. So when you need high density to stop an influx, a kick of, from hydrocarbons, um, that's killing the well. And you're
Right.
using high density drilling fluid. When you're drilling underbalanced, when you decide to come out of the hole, if you're not, if you need to kill the well, then to stop influxes. That was one thing when I was on chalk wells. We would drill underbalanced, we would let the well flow, but when we wanted to trip pipe, we had to spot a very heavy pill of kill mud, and then you come out of the hole, and then you went back in, circulated it out, and drilled ahead with your light fluid and let the gas flow, and you had, equipment to handle that.
Yeah. So something that kind of came into my mind thinking through it, and I'm trying to put myself in shoes of, say someone who's fairly new to the drilling fluids game. How would you describe the difference between a mud cap and kill mud? Because they kind of fall under the same umbrella, and I would say that a mud cap is a form of kill mud. But can you kind of tie that into that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on the terminology, Justin. I think that, a cap, as we would call it, is just we spot heavy fluid on top of lighter fluid or above lighter fluid to stop that flow by increasing the column, the density of the column or increasing the equivalent pressure. So a cap does the exact same thing, right? And normally we are doing it once again, with our sort of nomenclature regionally in West Texas. A lot of it has to do with those water flows we're always fighting.
Cool. Perfect. No, thanks for just kind of defining the two, because I can see if someone getting started, to be like, well, what's the difference between a mud cap and kill mud? They kind of sound the same, but anyway, if anyone was curious out there, we got that answered. Let's talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously this can come in while you're drilling with oil-based mud, water-based mud. But let's start off with the water-based mud piece. Provide some sort of just some further detail on like mixing and how we're actually building these things.
Yeah, I think, the first thing to start out is, what density is your kill mud? And what we tend to see is sort of a broad brush of, hey, just give me some like 16-pound mud and that will cover anything I encounter. I'll just pump a larger volume. Um, but for a lot of these, if you do the math and you look at your shut-in pressures and how much overbalance pressure you want to have, you may not need that much density. But when we talk about, especially, killing these kinds of flows, what you're looking at, a lot of people say, hey, send me 16 or 18-pound mud. And the challenge is getting that stuff mixed thoroughly and properly to get it out there. So, one of the things is the more solids you have in drilling fluid, the slower it goes to mix it, which is why this is true in water-based or oil-based. A lot of times, if you expect to need a lot of kill mud, if you're gonna mix it on location, you'll have a mixing plant. You'll have, like, a hopper and a pre-mix pit, and you may even have, like, extra barite silos to mix all that stuff. Um, Given that you may not have that, there is a reasonable chance that you would mix it at the plant because it does take if you can do it offline, it does take some patience and some supervision.
Right.
Um, 'Cause with water-based mud, like, you start getting up 13, 14, 15 pounds and, like, you've gotta add that barite really, really slowly because even though it's water wet, it's gotta get water saturated, if you will, the base fluid. Otherwise it'll fall right through and start sitting in the bottom of the tank, which
Right.
is obviously something you don't want. So patience is absolutely the key there.
Yeah, and I wanna, do a shameless plug to the old Kermit warehouse.
Mm.
When we first started ramping up in the Permian, it was oftentimes folks would want some kill mud, and we would have to get creative on either building it, like you said, on the rig, which was time consuming and needed a lot of sort of management, supervision. But, we would then kind of depend on the warehouse and it just wasn't really set up initially to do a bunch of water-based mud building, but because of the nature of the basin needing more and more of it, now we've got a full-blown facility out there building kiln mud left, right, and center. And so whenever you make a call to need it, it's typically either ready or it's being mixed just because of the sort of the frequency of how often that it's getting ordered. But yeah, I mean, having a facility and infrastructure to be able to call and get that stuff hauled out because normally, if you need kill mud, it's not like, "Oh, I need some kill mud in a few days." It's more like, "Hey, yeah, we need it now." And
Right.
you make a quick call and get some trucks loaded up and on the way, can sure help save some time and, obviously effort at the rig level. So, yeah, that seems to be just kinda SOP now out in the Permian is just making sure you've got a good source of kill mud. And, maybe you're a small shop and you don't have that, but there's people who do sell it. It's kind of a regular thing. And so it's definitely important to consider if you move out to the Permian, you're gonna start drilling is understanding where you're gonna get your kill mud from if you're getting a bind. So, um, let's move on to the oil base side of things. Any difference there?
I think the big thing that people get wrong is or the risk is, you have to oil wet the bay, right? So you're gonna add some wetting agent, but, um, adding oil, which seems totally counterintuitive. So you're adding bayrite to make the mud heavy, and then you add oil, which is light. Um, and the thing that you have to keep in mind is that the sheer volume of solids that bayrite is going to displace, if you want to get your oil water ratio up to like a 90-10, that's not actually that much oil in the mud. But when you get to these high densities, like your volume of solids there's a lot of bayrite in there. And so even though it seems counterintuitive, you need to add oil to get that density up. And once again, you need some patience with respect to mixing slowly. The heavier you get, the longer it takes.
Right.
And, um, a lot of people, particularly, I mean, you talk about a well control situation. Um, we've certainly heard of situations, particularly in the Northeast, where when they take a flow, it can be gas and it can be serious, where they're already at a heavy mud weight, like a 15 pound, and they've got to weight up to 17 to kill the well. Um, and they're and like someone's in such a panic that they don't add the oil, they don't add the wetting agent. And what you end up with is a bayrite plug. And so now you've got another serious issue in the middle of a very serious situation. Um, so I think, like, yes, you want to move quickly, as you've already alluded to, but the other part is you've got to be patient. Slow is fast, right?
Right.
Um, so I think that's definitely something to keep in mind on the oil-based mud side.
Right. And then something that's again kind of elementary is though is when you're building kill mud, typically if it is heavy, you're having to add a lot of volume. So if you're a fairly new mud engineer and you're filling up your tanks to build, consider the amount of product you're adding that's going to ultimately result in the volume you want. Because if you need to call it a 100 barrel or 150 whatever, and you fill up your tank and you got a bunch of product, you might end up with a considerable amount more volume. So something to keep in mind when you're doing the math is how much volume you're going to end up with after building your kill mud. And so that kind of leads into the next site is like rig site preparation. Aside from what I already kind of mentioned, Matt, is there anything else that if you're doing it on the rig, things you need to consider?
Well, if you know you're gonna do it a lot, I think it is well worth having a pit out there to do it. I think tying into sort of some of your logistics considerations of pit management. Also, if you're throwing a lot of bayrite in, you may want to get a bayrite order, load out, understanding like you're gonna empty those silos, and maybe if you're in a situation where you're already using a lot of material, you're gonna want to have some backup.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing is keeping the let's say you have this stuff, you may end up doing a ton of fluid transfers. So imagine you mix this stuff, you pump it over into the well, you get out of the hole, you get back into the hole, you're ready to drill ahead. So you pump this out, you divert it up to it goes up into the trip tank. Then you want to move it to a frac tank and store it. So like this fluid can go through a lot of lines. It can, making sure you're lined up, making sure you know where everything's going to go and you have a plan. Um, and then I think even just, you know, a lot of people are worried about the mud settling out, and I agree it's necessary to like roll tanks and that kind of thing. But um, consider evaporation. Consider how much friction is going to be generated when you're circulating an 18-pound fluid through gun lines and that sort of thing, where you may actually be promoting, evaporation and break it. You could break down the mud. So you want to keep an eye on this stuff. Even if you haven't used it, it's worth doing a check and making sure nothing's changed as it's been sitting there. Um, but I think those are all like pretty important factors for the rig site. Um, and all this stuff requires people too, right? So when are you going to do this? When are you going to get the hands available to do it, particularly in a critical situation? Um, it can be very, very demanding as a mud engineer if you've got to mix a bunch of mud along with deal with other issues going on at the rig site.
Right. So, Matt, before we kind of wrap things up, I do want to revisit the cap conversation because there's some things in there that I think are worth mentioning and considerations. And so, some stuff we had in the notes here. So, kind of going back to cap for water flows, Matt, what are some things we need to really consider so we don't make any mistakes?
I think that we can be a little more, I don't know if nuanced is the right word. Yeah, sure, we'll go with that. But we could save some money by paying attention to some of the details. And by this, we see folks like mixing heavy mud and transporting it and all that. That's expensive.
Right.
Um, and what we see sometimes is, you know what, we're just going to pump 200 barrels every time because I know that no matter what, that's going to kill whatever's down there.
Sure.
Probably true. However, that's a lot of volume and that's a lot of money. Um, and so oh well, let's just pump 18 pounds. Why not? Or let's just pump 16 pounds. Well, it could be that you only need 12 pounds and like you don't need all of it. You're killing a fly with a sledgehammer kind of thing.
Right.
And all that has a cost where putting this sort of into your SOP of just we always do the same thing can actually affect you where you could say, okay, well, look, I know that I'm seeing 50 psi pressure when I'm shut in. I know what my static column should be. I can add 300 psi to that. TBD times 0.052 times the mud weight. Like, do the algebra, and say, look, like, let's pump that, and you could use a lot less bayrite. You'd still have plenty of safety factor. Um, But the big issue there is just, um, I think I think there's something valuable about being consistent where you say, "Look, we just always pump 50 barrels. We always do this." Like, it's easier for everybody. But
Yeah.
when we talk about how to get our costs down, there are a lot of situations where, knowing how much money is spent on this alone is a big driver for, you know, potential savings. Um, I mean, sometimes you may not even have a flow. It's just like, when we come out of the hole, we always do this.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think, there's, and part of me, again, being coming from that world, it's nice to have things standardized because then at 3 in the morning when you're trying to do the math, it's easier just to just do what you did and because you know it works. So it's a balance, right? It's like, do we like engineer the crap out of everything we do? No. Do we standardize everything just because it's easy and dummy proof? No. Kind of somewhere's in the middle. But to your point, Matt, like there is a lot of, I guess, I don't want to call it waste, but just like room for improvement. If a little bit more, I guess effort is put into looking at the details instead of, just kind of questioning again. So like, why are we doing this and why is the volume this? And it's like, I don't know, it was in a drilling program from 3 years ago and it's worked every time. I said, well, hey, let's take, you know, whatever, how long that takes to just reevaluate to make sure maybe we only need 150. Next thing you know, you extrapolate that, a bunch of savings. Here you go, customer. We did a little math and helped the program. So, kind of going back to just always, again, I think we've talked about this in other episodes, is like, you don't necessarily have to question everything, but certainly be curious enough to ask yourself, why do we do it this way? And is there a better way or a better method that could help improve performance or efficiencies? Because at the end of the day, is like if anyone out there is in the oil field for any length of time, it's just over time. You just get there's just a lot of efforts being made to improve on what we're doing, and there's little things that over time can matter. So and that's definitely one of them.
Yep. Yeah, I think, it goes back to also think about everybody throws in a safety factor, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, if we did 50 barrels of 16 pound, then I know if I do 50 of 16.5, I'll definitely be safe. And then the next person comes along and says, well, we need to do 60 barrels just because one time. And all of a sudden we sort of like sandbag ourselves into an extreme place maybe we don't need to be. So, and I think there's a lot of, okay, why did we do this? And when we can get to the bottom of that, we can save a little money. And like you said, save a little money over a lot of wells is a lot of money. So
Yeah, exactly. Last but not least, Matt, how would you say this is like a form of well control, or how would you sort of distinguish well control from, say, mud caps or kill mud, or can you, I guess,
well, you use kill mud to kill a well, right? But how you do it is a whole other. I mean, this is why people are well control certified at the rig. That there are different methods for how you are going to kill the well. That's a whole process and set of procedures that I definitely want to recognize, and also say like just spotting a cap is not the only way that you kill a well. If you have a serious well security issue, you are having pressure control, particularly if it's a hydrocarbon influx. There is a whole set of procedures and best practices for that, and I just wanted to make sure we pointed out we really haven't covered that. So
yeah, no, it's good. I'm glad you sort of cleared that up because I'm sure there's folks out there that were wondering the same thing. We try and cover all bases, but if we haven't covered all bases, for the listeners out there, please reach out to us over LinkedIn, or you can hit us up at the Flowline podcast at asfluids.com. Be on the lookout for some more great episodes coming. If you're a video type information consumer, then we've got the videos up too now, which is awesome. So with that said, everyone take care. And if you have questions, please reach out. Until next time, be safe out there, folks.
take care.
Thanks for listening. Please tune in next week for another exciting episode of The Flowline. And remember, may your returns always be full and your trips always smooth. Views expressed in this program belong to participants and not their employees. The program is for informational purposes only and cannot take the place of seeking professional advice. Copyright AES Drilling Fluids.